Hi, my name is Kristen. There's a lot that goes into making up a bill. So today I'm going to be talking about Alice Paul and her fight for women's suffrage. Um, when she was young, her mother would take her to women's suffrage meetings, and I believe that's where she got her influence. But this fight started back in 1847 with another famous woman, and her name is Susan B. Anthony. Alice's family was very into the gender equality, education for women, and working for the betterment of society. Speaking of the women's education, Alice was very well educated. Um, in 1905, she received a bachelor's degree from Swarthmore, which was founded by her grandfather. And then later, she graduated from Columbia University, which is now known as the New York School was previously known as the New York School of Philanthropy. When she was only 16 years old. In 1907, she earned a master's degree at the University of Pennsylvania. She also received a scholarship in 1907, and she went to England to go study. And when in England, she studied at the Woodbrook Settlement for Social Work, the University of Birmingham, and London School of Economics. When she returned back to the United States, she received a PhD in sociology at the University of Pennsylvania in 1912. Then in 1922, she received her LLB from Washington College of Law. In 1927, she received her LLM from the American University, and she also received her doctorate of civil law from the American University. Throughout her life, she was involved in many organizations, ranking in most of them as the founder and the president. She was in the NAWSA, which is the National American Women's Suffrage Association. Then she went to the CUWA, which is the Congressional Union of Women's Suffrage. In 1916, they combined both of these organizations, and now they are called the NWP, which is the National Women's Party. The day before President Woodrow Wilson's inauguration, Alice had gathered several people for a parade. They were several women walking and holding banners and people on floats. This was estimated to be the biggest parade ever seen, with an estimated over 500,000 people involved. Some of the traumatic events that had followed was called the Silent Sentimentals, which is where the women would hold up banners. They were purple and white and silver, and they would say on there, "Mr. President, what will you do for suffrage?" And another said, "Mr. President, how long must women have to wait for liberty?" These women would just stand there in silence holding these banners in front of the White House. After picketing the White House, they started getting harassed, which then led to the arrest of several picketers. At first, they were arrested, let go, and then come back. And I guess the police and the government got tired of it, so they decided if they arrested Alice Paul, that this would stop. But it didn't. Alice Paul was arrested on October 20th of 1917. She was supposed to serve 7 months. In turn, she only served 5 weeks. In the 5 weeks, she went, when she first there, she went on a hunger strike for the first 2 weeks. Then they pulled her into the prison hospital and force-fed her for 3 weeks, and every day, 3 times a day. They stuck a tube down her throat to force feed her liquids through her body, which caused her to become even more ill. After the public had heard of some of the stuff that was going on at the prison, they asked for them to be released. And on November 17th and 18th of 1917, they were released because of the pressure that was put on the government. On January 9th, 1918, President Wilson announced his support of the women's suffrage amendment. And when presented in the 1918 election, the amendment for women's suffrage, it was denied by 2 votes in the Senate. So then Alice lobbied the election for pro-suffragist in the Senate. And when they presented the bill again, it was passed on June 4th, 1919 by one vote. This fight took 72 years, but I'm thankful for the women who stood up and fought until the end for women's rights to vote. This was the 19th Amendment and was named after Susan B. Anthony for all of her dedication. So I again thank you, and thank Alice Paul and all the other women who dedicated their lives to women's suffrage.